appearing via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. He was in Nashville yesterday. Let's get the recap from Scott Grayson here on Grayson's Grades 97.3 ESPN. Scott, what's happening, man?
Oh, just another day in paradise, Mike.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yes, man. Another day in paradise. You were in the locker room after the game yesterday. Kind of give us a little feel, a morbid feeling. Was it like shell shock? What would you take the temperature of what was going on in that locker room?
I think everybody was just stunned. I think they were just stunned that they had gotten the lead in overtime and then were unable to stop Tennessee from winning it. And, it was interesting just seeing how the guys dealt with it. Some chose to just kind of get out of there as fast as possible, get on that bus and just try to get out of that stadium as quickly as they could. Others, like Chris Long, were just staring. I mean, just sitting at the chair at his locker, just staring at the back of the locker. I think he was just so stunned and surprised and shocked and frustrated all at the same time. I mean, he must have spent about 10 minutes just sitting there like that before he finally got up. So, yeah, I think they were all just stunned and trying to figure out what happened and determined to not let it happen again.
Let me get your opinion on this. You were on the road with the team. You're also at all the home games. Would you say that the defense as a whole has issues, or is this as simple as the splits on the road and the home tell the story?
I think it was I think the defense just didn't play well yesterday, bottom line. I mean, they just, we'll get into it with the grades, but I also don't think that either of the coaches, Jim Schwartz or Doug Peterson, particularly called aggressive game plans. It seemed like they were playing not to lose as opposed to trying to win. And I think that I don't know that they were playing that way in Tampa, but I think that was the case in this one. And yes, there's definitely something going on here with the way the team has played on the road versus at home, and it's something they've got to fix. I mean, for whatever reason, they've got to be able to make better decisions and make better play calls out of all that to make good things happen for them. So that's something that I think they've just got to do a better job of. And those coaches, I think it starts with them.
Scott, do you think, there's so many things that went wrong yesterday that we could spend 10 minutes on the offensive line, 10 minutes on the defensive line, and the list goes on and on. But what I'm thinking about now that it's the next day is, do you see a lack of urgency, a lack of passion? Like last year, what was so special about that run is they just had that it factor. Like if there was a fourth down in overtime last year and they needed a stop, they were getting it, regardless of how they played throughout the game. And now I'm seeing a little bit of a trend where they just seem like they don't have it. Am I a little bit on point there, or what are you seeing with that?
I just don't feel like they're all I think they're all playing in the same playbook. I just don't know if they're all on the same page, if you know what I mean. It just seems like there's miscommunication taking place on both sides of the ball in terms of, for the offensive line, who's picking up the blitzer, who's picking up this, and late recognition at times at a guy coming in. On the defensive side of the ball, the secondary just looks a little lost. Like they're not playing on the same page. Like I said, it's like Mills seems like he's expecting some help at times, and it's nowhere to be found. So who's at fault there? Is it Mills, or is it one of the safeties that just didn't recognize that a guy was heading down deep there, that he needed the help? Something's got to be cleaned up, and I think, a stunning loss like that can do one of two things. It can either rewrite the ship and get everybody clearly focused back on moving in the same direction and the same pace, being on the same page in the playbook, or it can fracture the foundation that has been a firm piece of this success here over the last, year and a half or so.
Yeah. Now, Scott, I want to get to your grades here. I want to start with the losers, so to speak. There's some Fs to be had. You definitely gave out a few, but one group in particular was the offensive line. This touted offensive line that we all love to speak highly of yesterday did not look so good. There was people in the backfield all afternoon. So talk about the grade that you gave the offensive line there and what you saw.
I gave him as a whole an F. I just felt like every single one of them on that line was at some point guilty of allowing guys to get hits on Carson Wentz. And I think, look, you heard Doug Peterson say it today in his press conference that, Tampa and some other teams the Colts have done it to them. They've sent blitzers. They've tried to disguise where it's coming from. And, with what the Titans did to him yesterday, that they better expect more of this until they can stop it. So that's something that this offensive line, for whatever reason, as good as it was touted to be, the communication there is just not there going down the line with who's picking up who. And like I said, running backs were guilty of that as well, particularly Wendell Smallwood at times of not picking up blocks on blitzers. And it all led to Carson Wentz taking a ton of hits and under way too much pressure. 4 sacks for Wentz. You can't have that in a game like that. They've got to do a better job of that. And hopefully the film study will reveal where the problems were, and they can fix that. They're definitely talented. I think that maybe they heard a little bit too much of how good they are, and they got punched in the mouth, and we'll see how they come out of it.
Yeah, interesting because you gave Wendell Smallwood a C. I don't know that Ajayi made – I don't see – I do see – Ajayi got an A. So you gave Smallwood a C and Ajayi A. My question is, Ajayi's got 15 for 70. Smallwood's got 9 for 40, 5 for 40. I mean, they're running the ball almost 6.5, 7 yards a carry. Where was the run game?
Well, you know what? To me, as that game went on, I tweeted this out at one point, I think you noticed what a difference it made not having Clement or Sproles in the game. They did not have that change of pace guy that could, take a short pass or take a handoff and outside and make something happen with it. Smallwood and Ajayi, they're guys who have to work pretty much between the tackles. And Smallwood's average per carry was nearly 8 yards, which is excellent. But then, Ajayi got, the bulk of the carries, which I really didn't expect with him having that, sore back. I thought it might be flipped the other way, and Ajayi be the guy who tried to power you through sometimes with some of those runs. But, I gave Smallwood the C because I penalized him heavily for the missed blocks that led to sacks on Wentz. His, stats looked pretty good for the opportunities he had. But, I think Peterson went away from the run game, and then all of a sudden in overtime he decided I'm going to run the ball 5 out of 8 times. And it's, they never took a shot in the end zone in overtime and all that. I don't understand where the play calling was and all that, and I kind of shifted gears here from Smallwood and Ajayi to that. But, I just thought that the running backs deserved some more opportunities, and they just couldn't get that going.
Yeah, 17-3 at that moment is when I thought maybe I thought they were running the ball pretty effectively, and I was like, 17-3. I would have liked to have seen more of that, which goes to, I guess you go to Doug Peterson. You gave him a D. I thought this was one of the worst games I can remember him having since going all the way back to his first year.
Yeah, definitely, a lot of head scratching. You're right, for the first time in quite a while with him. Normally he has a pretty good opening script to the game, did not in the game there. I like the deep shot at the opening play. Nelson Aguilar didn't get under it and pull it in, and that was kind of foreshadowing the kind of day he would have. But you look at Peterson's play calling, they had the ball with 11 seconds left and a timeout, and he ran the ball instead of, at the end of the first half, ran the ball instead of taking a shot in the end zone or maybe 2 shots in the end zone. You have that timeout. If Wentz does get pressure and get sacked, you can call the timeout, still kick the field goal. The aggressiveness, like I said earlier, just wasn't there. And for Peterson, usually he errs on the side of being more aggressive than not. And it just was – it was really hard to believe and shocking to see. And when he talks about everybody going back and reviewing the film, looking in the mirror, and then he says it includes him, he needs to review his play calling yesterday because it was definitely skeptical.
No doubt. Aguilar, Aguilar had a tough day. Alshon, you gave an A, and I thought he deserved an A. People were saying, see what he adds. Yet they still had trouble moving the ball and scoring. I mean, you have big days numerically. I think it's the first time he's gone over 100 yards as an Eagle, actually. Don't quote me on that, but I don't remember getting a 100-yard game last year. He had 105. Ertz had 112, yet it still seems like they have trouble moving the ball.
It was the rhythm. The stats do look decent. Wentz passed for over 300 yards. The stats are there, but they didn't sustain really good drives, and a lot of that was the rhythm that the running game couldn't provide, that the drops from Aguilar were hurting them with, the pressure on Wentz, the sacks, even some offensive penalties. All of that disrupted any time that it seemed like they were about to get into a rhythm, and I think that's the biggest reason why. I agree with you. The stats are there. The guys had the numbers, but they just couldn't get those drives going. And particularly one thing you haven't seen a lot from this team, when they get in the red zone, usually they finish. And they did not do that at all yesterday, and that was a big problem, a big reason why they weren't able to beat the Titans.
Scott, we're talking a lot about the secondary and Jalen Mills and play calling, but I feel like the defensive line is a lot to blame here, and that's part of the reason why the secondary is struggling. Last year, the defensive line was in the backfield from the other team's offense all day, wreaking havoc, and then yesterday it didn't seem like they were doing that consistently. You gave Michael Bennett a B. You gave Derek Barnett a B. But talk about that defensive line and a couple of those guys that you graded and maybe what's going wrong.
Part of that was Mariota and the Titans did have a pretty good game plan in terms of pretty short drops and getting rid of the ball quickly. We've seen that a lot, from some other teams Eagles play to try to neutralize some of that pass rush. And I think that's one reason why. They did occasionally get some pressure on Mariota, but, like one of my fears going into the game with a guy like him and a Russell Wilson, they extend plays. He got out of the pocket. He extended plays, at times made plays with his legs, scored a touchdown by running the ball in. And those are things that's one way you neutralize this defense. And, look at another thing. Because they weren't able to get sacks, they did get some tackles for loss. They got a couple of sacks, but they weren't able to stack them up and put the Titans in, I was going to say in enough third or fourth and longs, but they did do that and then didn't convert. I think a lot of that was the coverage wasn't there to force Mariota to hold the ball a little longer and allow that rush to get in there. I don't know that I necessarily blame the defensive line as much as I blame the coverage in the secondary for that.
For the full Grayson's Grade report card, go to 973ESPN.com. He was in Nashville, so get more of his coverage inside the locker room, interviews with certain players. Zach Ertz, I remember seeing there. Brandon Graham's another one. So check them out on our website, 973ESPN.com. He's got all the video from inside the locker room right on our website right now. And as you write, Scott, the Eagles stunned but not panicked after the loss. They're at the quarter pole. We asked our listeners on Twitter, how do you feel about the Eagles? A little disappointed about what you thought? They'll be fine, or extremely disappointing? What say you?
I think they'll be okay. They've just got to get healthy. They need Clement or Sproles. They don't necessarily need both of them, but they need somebody back there to have to respect it as a change of pace back on offense, fix the offensive line issues. I think they'll be fine. Defensively, it's a matter of they've got to have a little bit of a come-to-Jesus moment as a unit, and I think that once they do that, they'll be okay. It's just September. I don't think anybody needs to panic or really, push that red button that's staring in front of you. Everything's going to be okay. This division is relatively weak. They haven't even played a division game yet. So no need to panic. I think you just got to sit back and let them try to iron some of this out. It's never easy to repeat as Super Bowl champs. You hear that over and over, and I think we're seeing why. I think they'll right the ship, and they'll definitely get into competing the way that they should here down the October, November, December. All
right, Vikings are up next. Scott will be there. Of course, we'll have more from Scott on the web, and of course, you can hear him right here during Grayson's Grades after every Eagles game on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Scott.
All right, thanks, guys.